Just about any piece of technology you buy today comes with the ability to connect to the internet. Your smartphone, your TV, and yes, even your game consoles. Video game consoles have been connecting to the internet since the 1990s. But it wouldn't be until Xbox Live launched in 2002 that online gaming would enter the mainstream for video game systems. This is the story of the Xbox. And in this part, we'll be discussing the foundation and launch of Xbox Live, and how it completely changed the world of gaming. We'll also be discussing Microsoft's relationship with various gaming publishers and developers shortly after the launch of the original Xbox. The Xbox was not the first game system to connect to the internet, nor was it the first console to offer multiplayer gaming over the web. In fact, every 6th generation console was capable of connecting to the internet for online gaming, although some were more limited than others. What the Xbox did have over the competition was a centralized hub for online gaming, called Xbox Live. Xbox Live, originally under the working title Xbox Online, was a core feature of the console from day one. By the late 90s, personal computers had hit the mainstream, and many of them were connecting to the internet via dial-up modems. Microsoft was slow to incorporate the internet with their Windows platform. It wouldn't be until 1994 that the company took the idea seriously. A memo titled "Windows, the Next Killer App on the Internet" managed to turn heads, and ultimately swayed Bill Gates into incorporating the internet into Windows 95. The author of that memo was Jay Allard. Allard wasn't just an advocate for the internet, he lived it, he breathed it. He would join the Xbox team during the development of the system and insisted that the console be made with an Ethernet port for broadband internet as opposed to the popular dial-up modem seen in systems like the Dreamcast. Others argued that dial-up would still be around for a few years to come, and utilizing only broadband would severely limit the user base. Allard would be right again, as adoption of broadband communications would increase after the release of the Xbox. The Xbox team had hoped to launch the Xbox with an online service on day one, but the prolonged development cycle for the hardware had pushed it back. At E3 2002, Microsoft's focus was squarely put on their Xbox Live service. Microsoft showcased details on the service, which they slowly started rolling out to consumers earlier in the summer. Microsoft announced that 14 titles would launch with the Live service in the fall of 2002. And more than 50 online titles would be available on the Xbox by the end of 2003. Ed Fries, then the vice president of Xbox game content, would excite fans with a tease of sequels to titles like Project Gotham Racing and Halo. Titles that would be built with online gaming in mind. On November 15, 2002, 1 year after the Xbox had been unleashed onto the world, Xbox Live was made available for all consumers. A yearly subscription to Xbox Live would run you $50. Xbox Live was a revolution in online gaming. It boasted stronger servers and faster internet speeds when compared to Sony's PlayStation 2. Xbox Live offered the ability to download games directly to the Xbox's hard drive, and to even download additional content for games. Xbox Live had a friends list with usernames, a simple but popular concept that has been copied by most of Microsoft's competitors. With Xbox Live, Microsoft created the modern online gaming blueprint and the foundation of one of their most popular services. Unlike other online services for gaming at the time, Xbox Live was an all-encompassing online option. You didn't need a separate account to play separate games. For consumers, this was a fantastic option, but for Electronic Arts, it was seen as an act of war. EA had been creating online games for a few years at this point, and all of their titles utilized EA's own dedicated system. While other developers and publishers lined up behind Microsoft for the new Xbox Live service, EA rebelled. EA wouldn't enable online play for their titles for the Xbox. Only the PlayStation 2 version of their games would feature online play. Microsoft attempted to bridge the gap in the Xbox's library by developing first-party sports games to combat EA's popular Madden and NBA Live series. The standoff would last until 2004, when EA announced that they would support Xbox Live for all future releases. Microsoft had been quietly working behind the scenes with EA to win them over. Microsoft would loosen their grip on Xbox Live and allow EA to have more control over their online titles. And Microsoft would cancel their fledgling sports titles in development, so EA's sports lineup would have less competition. With EA on board, it seemed like nothing could slow Xbox Live down now. By July of 2004, Xbox Live had surpassed 1 million users. A year later, in July of 2005, they would have over 2 million. Xbox Live helped establish Microsoft as the leader in online gaming in the early 2000s. But it wouldn't be until the fall of 2004 that Microsoft and Xbox saw Xbox Live reach its full potential. Microsoft's history in the world of business through the 80s and 90s had followed a pretty simple guideline. They would try to make a better product than the competition, and if they couldn't, Microsoft would use its enormous wealth to buy out the competition. This had led the company to be scrutinized by both the American government and American populace that bought their products. In the early days of the Xbox, Microsoft had tried to use these same techniques to establish the company's foothold in the gaming market. Microsoft offered to buy out Nintendo and turn the 100-year-old company into a first-party developer. Nintendo discussed the proposal and made an offer, $25 billion. Microsoft declined. Microsoft instead turned their attention to developers. In 2002, Microsoft already had major developers like Bungie and Ensemble Studios under their wing. In September of that year, Microsoft purchased Rareware for $375 million. Headed by Ed Fries, the buyout was meant to give Microsoft a major developer and to take away one of Nintendo's biggest partners. Nintendo owned a 49% stake in Rareware since the early 90s. Since their hit Donkey Kong Country title released in 1994, Rare had been releasing hit after hit on Nintendo's Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and Nintendo 64 consoles. The other 51% of Rare was owned by Chris and Tim Stamper. Talks of a buyout had been swirling for a few months before Microsoft's purchase. The Stampers wanted Rare to be owned by a singular publisher. Not only would this provide more stability for Rare, but would also give them more funding to develop bigger and better games. Discussions between Microsoft, Nintendo, and Activision occurred over a few months. Microsoft would continue to raise their bid on Rare, ultimately causing Activision to drop out. With only Nintendo left, Nintendo opted to sell their share of Rare to Microsoft. The buyout caused a major shakeup within Rare, and over 30 employees would leave the company during the transition. Rare titles in development were either cancelled or the development was moved to the Xbox. Rare's first title with Microsoft, Grabbed by the Ghoulies, would release a little over a year after the purchase. For many people, Rare would never be the same under Microsoft. Rare would release multiple titles on the Xbox and Xbox 360, but would eventually become an exclusive developer for Microsoft's Kinect peripheral in 2010. Rare's founders, the Stamper brothers, would stay with the company until 2007, when they resigned to seek other career opportunities. Former employees of Rare state that Microsoft's more bureaucratic structure had caused a decline in the quality of their releases, but others state that Rare's level of quality had already started to diminish under Nintendo. Nowadays, Rare is no longer locked behind the Kinect. Microsoft has taken Rare's older IPs and re-released them. Rare's Killer Instinct would even see a reboot on the Xbox One under the helm of the developer Double Helix. Rare's most recent title was released in 2018. The game is Sea of Thieves, an online multiplayer game. The title seems closer to what Rare used to make under Nintendo, but time will tell if Rare will ever be able to reclaim their former glory. With their focus on Xbox Live, Microsoft's first-party lineup in 2002 was rather shallow. While Halo appealed to adults, Xbox tried to make the Xbox more appealing to children with the release of Blinx the Time Sweeper in October of 2002. Blinx was a 3D platformer, similar to Nintendo's Super Mario series. The title was met with mediocre reviews, and Blinx was never able to hit it off as a family-friendly mascot for the Xbox. Microsoft would have better luck with MechAssault, an action shooter title, when it released in November of 2002. The title would be met with positive reviews, and served as the first killer app for Xbox Live. Both Blinx and MechAssault would receive sequels on the Xbox in 2004. Many developers and publishers created consoles exclusives for the Xbox as well. This was primarily due to the Xbox's similar development structure to PCs, and its increased power compared to the PlayStation 2.
Notable examples of this include Bethesda's The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, BioWare's Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Valve's Half-Life 2, and Doom 3 from id Software.
Big games were on their way to the Xbox, and one of the most anticipated sequels at the time was officially unveiled in September of 2002. Halo 2 was officially announced less than a year after the first game's release. While only showcasing a CG trailer, it was more than enough to get fans excited. It wouldn't be much longer until Bungie showcased their ambitious project. At E3 2003, a demo of the game was showcased to the public for the first time. This new Halo would continue the story of Master Chief, feature online play the likes of which console gamers had never seen, and the game would only be available on Xbox. Thank you for watching. This is the third part in a multi-part series about the story of the Xbox. Subscribe to this channel to catch the next episode when it comes out next week. You can support this series by liking the video and sharing it on your favorite social media sites. Leave a comment on what you would like to see the story of next, and check out any previous episodes that you might have missed. In the next part, we'll be covering the release of Halo 2, the introduction of a new home console from Microsoft, and the end of the road for the original Xbox.